Hey everybody, welcome to the Calitraveler podcast show. I'm your host, Paul. Once again, welcome to the Calitraveler podcast show. I'm your host, Paul. Welcome to episode 13 of the Calitraveler podcast show, Throwback Journey 2019, part 2. Throwback Journey 2019. In May of 2019, I ended up completing a semester of my university, and it was time to go back home to the States and go visit my family for the summer. After a very, very long flight of about 12 hours, I was finally home. The first thing I did, as soon as I got out of the airport, I went and had my favorite Chinese food, and then went home and I slept like a baby for about 5 hours. And then after that, I just started to go drive around. I had to get used to driving in the States again, because here in Thailand, when you drive on the left side of the road and the steering wheel is on the right side of the car. Well, in the US, it's opposite. The steering wheel's on the left side of the car, and they drive on the right side of the road. Had to get used to that again. It takes maybe about a day to get used to, but after that, that's easy. So this was a very fun-filled summer. Ended up doing a couple of things that were so much fun. Ended up going to E3, which, for those of you that don't know what E3 is one of the biggest gaming conventions in the world. They show it every single year on TV. I used to watch it on Spike TV all the time back in the States. And last year, I finally got the chance to go to E3. I went and I got to preview a couple of games when I was there. So I ended up flying out of San Francisco to LA, and I spent 3 days in Los Angeles. Stayed in an area called Hacienda Heights, which is east of Los Angeles. And for those of you that don't know about Hacienda Heights is home to the Sai Lai Temple, which is home to the largest Buddhist temple in all of North America. And it is one of the most beautiful places that you could ever visit, and it's literally in the hills of Hacienda Heights. So after visiting the Sai Lai Temple, it was time to go and register for E3. Went to E3 at the LA Convention Center, and after that, went back to a hotel and ended up resting, did some sightseeing. But the next day was day one of E3. So day one of E3 was so busy, I didn't really have time to do much. So you go in, you sign up, and then you go inside the convention hall. There was so many games, so many different consoles, so many different booths, and it was so much fun. I ended up playing a game for the Nintendo Switch. Now, unfortunately, this game had a lot of glitch issues, so beta testers beware. And ended up walking around for a couple of hours. Then it was finally time to go and play Luigi's Mansion 3. And that game was a lot of fun. If you're a Super Mario World fan, I would highly recommend either renting this game or simply buying it. And the cool part is they have a demo. It's about 20 minutes. And you can play a mission that they already have set within their booth. Ended up playing that. Then went outside and I got some lunch. Now, the lunch that they had at E3, there's so many places to choose from. There's a lot of restaurants by the Los Angeles Convention Center. Ended up going to a food truck and I had some bomb-ass tacos. And then after that, went inside, walked around, checked out some more places, and then went back to my hotel, rested. Okay. Fast forward next day. Day 2, I go back, and this time I ended up demoing one of my favorite game series, Borderlands. So got to play Borderlands 3. The good thing this time is that there was no glitches with the game, so everything went smooth. And then I was gonna go play a couple of other games, but unfortunately they were full, so couldn't do the demos. And then day 3, I wasn't at E3 like all day like I had been for day 1 and day 2. Was only there for a few hours. There wasn't really much going on, and after that it was time to go back home, time to go back to the hotel and rest, because the next day was the start of a 5-day cruise to Mexico. Next morning, end up waking up and then drive to the Carnival Terminal, which is in Long Beach, which is south of Los Angeles. So you get pre-cleared by immigration at the terminal. They take your passport, and then they take your bags, and you get on the cruise ship. And these cruise ships are fucking huge. When I went on the cruise ship, it was like the coolest thing I had ever been on. I'd never been on a cruise ship before, so it was the very first time that I'd been on one. And it's just like, my goodness, this is like a kid walking in a candy store. And there's so many places that you want to explore. There's so many things you want to do. But the first thing that everybody wants to do is eat. And the cool part about cruise ships is that they have dining services 24/7. So if it's like 3 a.m. and you want to have some ice cream, you can go have some ice cream. They have ice cream machines all over the dining area of the cruise ship. But then after that, ended up going to my room on the ship. And the cool part about it, cruise ships, is that you leave your suitcases in the terminal and then they load them, and then they'll actually bring your bags to your room, so you don't have to worry about taking all of your suitcases and then having to worry about everybody else having suitcases. It just clutters it up. It's a safety issue. This is a cruise ship. Then our cruise director, which I'm going to name him. His name is Lee Mason. Lee, your cruise director, is what he's referred to. He actually has a Facebook page. Amazing dude, and I recommend checking him out. He tells everybody that we need to meet at the muster station. Now, the muster station is a meeting point on a cruise ship, and by international law, it doesn't matter if you're 4 years old or 400 years old, you have to go to the muster station when they call for you. Now, in case of an accident, in case of a fire or something, you have to go to your muster station. So depending on where you're at, and depending on what it says on your lanyard ID on the cruise ship, it will tell you what muster station to go to. So they go over the basic safety, the do's and don'ts of a cruise ship, just explaining a little bit about international law. And then after that, it was time to set sail. Now, if you're going on a cruise ship, what I recommend you do is I recommend you go onto the deck, the upper deck of the cruise ship, because once you go on the upper deck, what's really cool about the cruise ships is that you can get a spectacular view of disembarking from the harbor. And so you're sailing out and you just see the view of Long Beach just going in the distance, and finally you're out at sea. Now, you're at sea for about 2 days. So, in all technicality, the cruise was actually 7 days, but I'm not counting the days that are spent out at sea. So, what did I do? I took a nap. Being at sea, there's not really much you can do. However, when you're on a cruise ship, there's a shit ton of things to do. During the times that I was out at sea on the cruise ship, I pretty much just walked around the cruise ship, got so much to eat. At nighttime, they have, at the pool area of the cruise ship, they have an inflatable movie screen. So they bring that down and they have movies. I remember one of the movies that they had shown on the ship was Bohemian Rhapsody, which, for those of you that haven't seen it, it's a movie about Freddie Mercury. Rami Malek plays Freddie Mercury, and he did a fantastic job. Also, there are casinos on cruise ships. There was one on this cruise ship. Now, I don't gamble, so I walked through it. Now, these casinos do not have a 24/7 opening, or they don't have an opening everywhere that you sail. So when you're in international waters, so when you're outside of the US, which international waters begin 120 miles, or I believe it would be 180 kilometers outside of the US. And so once you cross into international waters, those casinos open up, but when you're going back to the US, those casinos close. So, ended up taking a picture of the most amazing sunset that I had ever seen in my life. And I kept looking at the TV channel on the cruise ship that showed the map of where exactly we were. And I was so excited that we had finally crossed into Mexico. It had been late at night that we crossed into Mexico. And I was really happy about this because part of my ancestry comes from Mexico. So on my mother's side of the family, I'm of Mexican descent. So I'm just getting more and more pumped up. I had been at that time to Mexico only once, but I was in Nogales, Sonora, which is in the north of Mexico. And this cruise was going to Cabo San Lucas. Cabo San Lucas is in the Baja Peninsula of Mexico. Now, the Baja Peninsula is composed of two states, Baja California, which is up on the north, and that borders the state of California and the state of Arizona. And then half of it is called Baja California Sur, which is South Baja California. And Baja in Spanish means low, Lower California. So that morning, we ended up reaching Cabo San Lucas. The captain announces on the intercom system that we are about to embark into Cabo San Lucas. Now, we didn't actually put into port in Cabo San Lucas. Now, what we ended up having to do is we ended up taking smaller ships, and they weren't dinghies. Dinghies are the ships that will take you from the shore to the ship if it's docked a little bit out of the harbor. So we ended up going into Cabo San Lucas. First thing I do whenever I go somewhere, I'm in another country, I immediately exchange my currency for local currency. So I exchanged US dollars for pesos. And then had to wait for a little while because what's going on this excursion. Now, excursions are extra trips. And this excursion that I went on was actually camel riding in the desert. Pretty crazy, right? I'm in the desert in Mexico and I'm doing camel ride. So it was a lot of fun. Ended up having to wait for our van. Now, our van was going to take us outside of Cabo San Lucas. And I think we were about maybe 1 hour's drive outside of Cabo San Lucas. We were still on the coast, but the coast of the Baja Peninsula is so interesting depending where you're at. So most of Baja California, Baja Peninsula, is desert. So here you are going through the desert and you can see the ocean. And we finally get to our destination. Now that destination ended up having basically like kind of like a private area of the beach, and then our tour guide explains to us about the camels and explains what kind they are, where they came from, how old they are, and instructed us how to properly ride them. Now the thing is, it's not like horseback riding where it's free and you do whatever you want. You're still following a group, and these camels are all linked together, so you're not going anywhere. You don't have to worry about anything happening to you because they take care of everything. So you got to ride around the desert a little bit, and you ride right by the beach. After that, it was time for lunch. They had like a buffet for lunch, and they had a lot of things. Now, I ended up having one of my favorite Mexican dishes, which is called chicken mole. The chicken mole, it sounds kind of weird, but if you actually knew about chicken mole, you'd realize it's amazing. So, mole is a sauce. It's a chili sauce, but it's made with chocolate, not sweet chocolate like Hershey's, but like bitter chocolate. And then it's mixed with chilies and other seasonings. And then for a drink, I had horchata. Horchata is a rice drink, and it's made with rice, milk, sugar, and cinnamon. So we had lunch, and then after that, it was time to get back on the van and then go back to Cabo San Lucas. Explored around for a little while, and I was really excited to be in Cabo San Lucas itself because of the fact that I am a huge fan of Van Halen and Sammy Hagar, and Sammy Hagar's Cabo Wabo restaurant happens to be in Cabo San Lucas. So I went there. I was so happy because I finally got to go there. They have a location in Los Angeles, yes, but the original one is in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. Now, unfortunately, Sammy Hagar was not there because Sammy Hagar was at home probably. But every October for his birthday, they have Sammy's birthday bash where his band ends up playing on his birthday, and it's just so much fun, so much entertainment. So after that, it was time to get back on the ship and then embark for Mazatlan in Sinaloa, Mexico. After disembarking from Cabo San Lucas, we were out at sea for about 8 to 9 hours. We were crossing the Gulf of California, which is also known as the Sea of Cortez, named after Hernan Cortez, who founded what is now Mexico City and established Spanish rule over what is now Mexico. But its actual name is the Gulf of California. We end up crossing over into the state of Sinaloa to Mazatlan, which is a coastal city. Now, I will be honest with you, I was really nervous to go to Mazatlan. I have heard about Mazatlan on the news, and not for good reasons. But being the curious human being that I am, I wanted to get off the ship and explore Mazatlan. But I was most excited about the excursion that I was going on, which was going through villages and having an authentic Mexican lunch, which was amazing. We get off the cruise ship and we go to the buses, and my excursion took me to 3 different places. So, of course, we went through Mazatlan and we were leaving the city. We were going due east towards the state of Durango. And the first place that we stopped at was a village called La Concordia. La Concordia is a village that was set up by the Spanish in the 1500s. And everything is just like it was back in the day. What was really cool is the roads were cobblestone roads. Kind of similar to the Appian Way in Italy, but this is in Mexico. We got to go to a bakery, and I got to have one of my favorite desserts, which is called a concha. So a concha is basically like a sweet bread, and on top of it, it have like sugar, or it can be chocolate. And this one was amazing because it was fresh. It was literally right out of the oven. So got to have that. And the bakery that we were at, it was a cute little place. Then we got to see how the ceramic tiles are made. So one thing in art from Mexico is Mexico was well known for its ceramic tiles and the designs that they make with them. So we actually got to see how they made the tiles, which most of the times they're made with clay. And then after it is dried out in the sun, it's then buffed, and then they end up painting it, and then they make it glossy so it's got that shiny look to it. And after that, we ended up going to a place called Copala. Copala is a very small village east of La Concordia. And we were there. We actually had to walk into the village because there's no roads that actually go into the main part of the village that are big enough for a car. So you walk down and you see all these houses. And again, this is a village that was set up in the 1590s. And they have a town square, and in the middle of it is a gazebo. Now, in traditional villages, these gazebos are where fiestas take place, where bands will perform. And they had a church there that was very old as well. It was really interesting to see this church. I mean, it's been around since the 1500s, but it's been well taken care of. And then we got back into the cars to get back onto the bus, and we headed back to La Concordia. We had lunch there. I ended up having beef fajitas for lunch, and then got to explore a little bit of La Concordia. And the church that they have in La Concordia is much bigger than in Copala. And then after that, we headed back to Mazatlan, and then we got back on the cruise ship. Now, I would have to say that the trip to Mazatlan and going on an excursion to the villages really brought tears to my eyes. Like I said, I'm half Mexican on my mother's side of the family, so I got to really have more of a intimate, up-close experience with part of my culture and part of my heritage. And so I was so happy, and I left having more of a love for part of my culture. And then after that, we ended up getting back on the cruise ship, and we were disembarking to our final journey. After we disembarked from Mazatlan, we were out at sea for about 6 to 7 hours, and we were going due south into the Pacific, and we were going to Puerto Vallarta in the state of Jalisco, which is in central Mexico. Wake up in the morning, and all of a sudden you see Puerto Vallarta. And the crazy part about Puerto Vallarta and the state of Jalisco itself is the climate and the look of Jalisco are very similar to that of Thailand because they're both tropical climates. I remember getting off the ship to get onto my speedboat to take me to Hidden Island. That humidity immediately hit me. I had just gotten out of the shower at that time about 1 hour prior, but it was so humid it felt like I was back in the shower again, except this time it wasn't water, it was a sweaty shower. And we get on the boat and we're going to a seaside village called Quimisto. And Quimisto is about a 30 to 40 minute boat ride out of Puerto Vallarta. Ended up going there and you walk through the village. It's very small, but then you take a trail and you're going out into the countryside. And I was going on horseback riding. This was part of the excursion. Ended up going. And the cool part is you have a little bit of control of the horses. Now, they do go slow, so you don't have to worry about, this horse is going too fast. I don't know how to ride a horse. If you don't know how to ride a horse, they make sure you know how to ride because it's too much of a safety issue if you don't. You go out there, and they have these beautiful waterfalls, and you're horseback riding for about 20 minutes, and you come across this waterfall. They have a little restaurant there. Now, I didn't go under the waterfall or anything like that. I just was taking advantage of the view from the restaurant. Now, however, we got back on the horses. We back into Quimisto, and we got back on the boat again, and we went a little bit out to sea, and we were in a semi-shallow part of the sea. We ended up going snorkeling. Now, the snorkeling on that day was very good. It was hot outside, and the water was clear. Unfortunately, I didn't bring a GoPro with me, so I didn't get any footage when I was snorkeling, but it was just spectacular. And then there's a hidden beach, and it's only exclusive for people that are on this excursion. So you go there. Again, they have a buffet, all you can eat, all you can drink. Just enjoying the perfect weather. And we're out there for about a couple of hours. And then after that, we had to get back on the boat, head back to Puerto Vallarta. Got to walk around a little bit. I was mostly at the waterfront, so didn't really get to see much. And then the sad part of the journey began. We had to leave Puerto Vallarta. And unfortunately, that was the end of the cruise. But we had to spend 2 days out at sea. So we were out at sea for a couple of days. Then around 2 a.m, we ended up crossing the border back into the U.S. You could see San Diego lights from the ship. And then about 7, 8 a.m, we were back in Long Beach, and it was time to disembark. Well, yeah, it was very sad. Then get a taxi, go to LAX, and then fly back to San Francisco. Luckily, the flight wasn't that long. It was about 1 hour. Now, my advice for all of you that want an exciting adventure, I highly recommend going on a cruise line. With a cruise line, there's so much that you can do. There's so many excursions that you can take and create everlasting memories. And that was how I had spent summer 2019 back home. Podcast can be heard weekly on my YouTube channel, so subscribe to Calitraveler 93, as well as liking my Facebook page, Calitraveler 93, and the podcast will be available on Spotify and other platforms.